And yet, we feel we are very close to a position now where if we don't halt what is happening around East Jerusalem, particularly by Al-Ad, one of the settler movements working very intensely in Silwan in particular, and where we're not able to arrest the plans of the mayor of Jerusalem in respect of East Jerusalem, we will find ourselves in a situation where there simply won't be peace. If Jerusalem is lost on the ground, in other words, we believe it's gone, it is not possible for any future Israeli government to go to war with its own people over Jerusalem, and such are the facts on the ground that make a negotiated settlement beyond the pale of possibility, then we are in a state of terminal crises. And of course, what would happen then is that it's not a case of Israel having a problem with the Palestinian people, but you have a question of also the Islamic world. The 1.5 billion Muslims would be, of course, in a state of high anxiety over this. And then, of course, Israel would be left with its own demographic challenges, with no partners to sort of assist in creating a framework for peace, because the aspirations on the part of Palestinians for their own national home have been undercut. The other aspect to what we see happening in East Jerusalem concerns the potential for something to go very awry. On the 21st of August 1969, an Australian tourist burnt down the Al-Aqsa Mosque. There was several days of intense rioting once the mosque was burnt down. I can't imagine if there was anything equivalent to that today, what we would do if we woke up. I don't even know where we would begin. I think we would be so lost. And this, I perhaps can speak for almost every government. I think we would sit there in shock and then wait to see what would happen. And I think if you try to game that sort of scenario, the consequences are almost incalculable. We pitch the world into something beyond all recognition to us. And if the threat of something like this is real because it's happened before, then we must take every measure to ensure that common sense is applied liberally to all our actions when we consider Jerusalem and its close surroundings. In 1969, the year that the Al-Aqsa Mosque was burnt down, there was a British physician who went to work in the Beth Abraham Hospital in upstate New York. And he had to deal with elderly patients who were suffering from the 1920s disease called sort of unmedically the sleeping sickness, and these were essentially catatonic patients. And this physician, Oliver Sacks, took to administering L-Dopa, the drug commonly used for Parkinson's patients, to these catatonic persons. And miraculously almost, he managed to revive them. And for a short period of time, they engaged in life in a manner that hitherto had been impossible for them, by talking to their relatives, meeting friends, and discovering themselves. And then, of course, as all of you know, with the continued administration of this drug, they then just lapsed back into their catatonic states. And so famous was the story that Harold Pinter wrote a screenplay for it, and then it was turned into a movie entitled Awakenings. And one cannot help but feel that when you look at the Middle East and you consider the developments from Madrid through Oslo and then beyond, and then the regression from the late 1990s onward, you cannot help but feel that unless we all resolve to solve this problem and do so quickly, that future historians will look back at this period of peace as a brief awakening, a brief moment in time that introduced itself to us and then departed as quickly as it came. And of course, the tragedy would be beyond words, I think, for all of us, because we either survive these crises together or we won't survive them together. We will all suffer grievously by this. Having said that, at the beginning, I have nothing to say. Like all from the Middle East, that's never quite true. So I've offered these reflections to you, not in answer to the many questions that you will no doubt have for me, but I think is in the form of reflections by a practitioner who, like you, spends a great deal of time looking at the problems of the Middle East and also looking at them with hope and with no shortage of frustration at time. But I thank you very much for inviting me, and I look forward to answering your many questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. As is our custom, we have 4x6 cards upon which we invite you to write your questions. And His Royal Highness has agreed to respond to them. We refer to this part of the session as a cerebral massage. And among the questions, if you're comfortable.
Let me go. Maybe I should stand up.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. Here is one. Israeli politicians repeatedly raised the notion that Jordan should be the Palestinian state, given its already large Palestinian population. How does Jordan respond to this frequently presented proposal? And what, related to the question, is the future of Jordan's large Palestinian population?
Well, it's nice of them to dispose of Jordan in a way that they see fit. You know, what I think is very worrisome about this narrative, largely on the Israeli right, is that it's built upon this notion that those who advocate peace are weak-willed moderates who simply don't understand the adversary. And it mirrors exactly the same current and stream of opinion you have on the Arab side, in the form of those who believe resistance is the only way to carry the day. And unfortunately, or fortunately perhaps one could say, I mean, history is littered with examples of leaders who have said to their people, steadfastness, the sacrifices that we must endure, the resistance that we must encourage, is the only means to succeed. Because these leaders, so many of them, have dragged their people to destruction with that belief. The only real way to succeed is to negotiate a settlement based on some notion of justice for those who've suffered, and to fulfill the national aspirations of a people who desire them. I don't often hear Palestinians themselves saying that they want to turn Jordan into Palestine. What the Palestinians like to say, and we support them, is that they want to see the end of the occupation such that they can govern their affairs free and unfettered by foreign interference. And I think that's the position that we take on this.
Okay. Thank you. The next one is religiously justified political radicalism seems to have become an accepted and often deadly method of expressing political and economic grievances. How does Jordan seek to deal with such violence within its own borders?
It's a question which I think needs to be answered from different angles. I think Amartya Sen is absolutely right when in publishing his work on identity and violence, makes the argument that in the world of today, we all carry multiple labels, and these labels must be held in some sort of balance. So I see myself as a Jordanian, a Muslim, a son, a husband, a father. I have these political views. I have these cultural tastes. I have a passion for music. I enjoy playing chess. And I can look at myself through these different prisms. And what Sen basically concludes, if I read him correctly, is that the extremists amongst us will attach importance to one label to the exclusion of everything else. Whether you are a chauvinistic nationalist or whether you are someone who holds so strongly to an ideology that it negates everyone and everything else. And his argument is that surely the human being of today can dispute issues, can doubt everything, and then through argument and discourse can either settle those doubts or ask further questions. But eventually we must renounce violence. We must renounce violence. We must drive and strive to ensure that war eventually is unthinkable. We cannot continue to inflict massive suffering on people because we believe we are right and they are wrong. It's simply, I think, unacceptable. In terms of how we view extremism within our own family, let's say, it is clear that His Majesty King Abdullah, together with many of the leaders in the region, King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, of course, President Mubarak of Egypt, have taken measures to address this issue. We know that it is fundamentally an issue that confronts us as Muslims. It's not really an issue for the West to address. We must address it. And through various programs, we have tried to do this. We have tried to ensure that, for instance, many of those who preach in our mosques have been through Sharia school. They are very well aware of the tenets of Islamic jurisprudence. This was not hitherto the case. In 20, 30 years ago, a substantial proportion of those who spoke in mosques did not have the requisite training that one would have thought was essential for them to do so. And I think we have made sure that this now is the case. We've also tried to embark upon a series of initiatives, and Cardinal McCarrick mentioned the Common Word. I think this is an initiative that draws a great many scholars, over 100 from the Islamic world, in opening up a dialogue with our Christian brethren, such that we can ensure that there is harmony between Christians and Muslims worldwide. And it's fundamentally grounded in the two injunctions to love the divinity of God and to love thy neighbor as thyself, I found in the Gospel of Matthew, I believe. And so this is common to the two religions, and we have enabled a program of international standing based on this. There is many a practical measure we can also take in this regard, and I don't know whether I should disclose what we have in mind here, but we are trying to think along practical terms. So it's not just simply a case of us meeting and greeting, but it's a case of us enabling common action that could be for the betterment of Christians and Muslims alike. A long-winded response.